Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create the lead sound from Chainsmokers Closer using Massive and Ableton Live's built-in plugins. This is what the final thing will sound like. Now I know this doesn't sound exactly the same as the original, but this is the closest I could get to it, so I thought I'll share this with you anyway. Maybe you can use my idea for this and take it all the way through. Now I'm using 2 copies of this lead synth. There's this main lead, then I have the same thing an octave below. The 2 layered together sounds a lot more full and a lot closer to the original. Alright, so let's recreate this. I'm going to create a new track here, copy the MIDI over, and solo this track. Let's load Massive onto this track. We're going to start from scratch, so file new sound here. Make sure we're hearing this. For the wavetable, I'm going to choose this multiplex wavetable. I'll set the wavetable position right in the center. So if you listen to this, that center position is what we're going to be using. Send this oscillator 1 to filter 1. In filter 1, I load in low pass 4, no resonance at all, and cut off at about the 1 o'clock mark. So we've cleaned up a little bit of that high end on that wavetable. Now I'm going to layer this with some noise. I'll switch to bright noise. This doesn't have so much low end. Amp up. Now I want this noise to be filtered, specifically through a high pass filter. So I'll send this to F2 here, and in filter 2 slot, I'll load in high pass 4. No resonance again, push up the level for the filter, set the mix in the center so we can hear both the filters, and let's set the cutoff right at the center. The noise is a bit too loud, so I'll tone it down. Alright, next we're going to introduce some feedback. Turn it on, and in the routing tab, let's make sure it's happening right after insert 1 here. Well, technically right after filter 1 as we're not using insert 1. Make sure the feedback dial is just below the point where it starts to really break apart the sound. Just below the halfway mark should do. Cool. Next, let's move on to the amp envelope, which is this 4th envelope here. I don't want any sustain, so I'll bring this level all the way down. I want some release, so let's crank up the release there. If you listen to the original sound, there's a little swell in the attack portion of the sound. So I'll set the attack to at about the 9 o'clock mark. Next, in the voicing tab, let's make sure it's set to monophonic. And in the oscillator tab, let's bring this glide time all the way down so we don't get any glide between notes. Next, let's add some distortion in the FX1 slot. I'll choose the Bronner tube. Drive at half and dry wet at half works. In the FX2 slot, I'll load in the dimension expander. Bring the size down to at about the 9 o'clock mark. Dry wet down as well to 9 o'clock. Next, let's EQ this. I'll bring the low shelf down so we get rid of all the lows in the sound at about the 9 o'clock mark. Let's crank up the highs with the high shelf. Sounds brighter now. And let's also boost some of the mid frequencies. Look for a nice frequency range. I think the center point works best. Now you might be thinking this doesn't sound anything like the original synth, but one of the key aspects of this sound is the processing. So outside of Massive, we're going to add in some effects in Ableton Live. First, I'm going to load in a flanger. I'll bring this buck down so the delay time is a bit higher, but feedback is lower. We're going to keep the dry wet at full. Okay, next we're going to add in a chorus. Now normally you wouldn't add a flanger and a chorus on the same sound, but I felt the 2 together really helped to create that movement to the sound to match the original. I just couldn't get the same with using just a chorus or just a flanger. Alright, so we've taken care of that. Next, we're going to add in some distortion using the overdrive effect. I'm going to bring the tone down a bit at about the 30% mark. Now we need to distort this further, so I'm going to add in a saturator next. I'll switch the mode to hard curve here. Let's bring down the volume. Now again, you can't get the sound by just using the saturator or just using the overdrive. Together it sounds a lot more correct. I'm going to crank up the drive here by 10 dB and reduce the output by 10 dB. It's a bit soft now, so I'll push up the level a little bit more. Next, we need to compress the sound, so I'll load in the compressor. Bring the threshold down. The parameters over here are not that important. Just make sure you're getting a nice balanced level there. Lastly, I'm going to add the Transient Master, which is a plugin that comes in the Native Instruments Complete bundle. I'm going to use this to tone down the sustain part of the sound, but emphasize the attack. So we get that snap in the sound. And that's pretty much it. Let's hear this in context. I feel like the noise is a bit too loud. So back in massive, let's just bring down the level of the noise. So this amp here, I'll bring down a bit. That sounds better. Let's just compare with my previous version. Alright, this sounds a lot more staccato-ish. So I think we have just a little bit too much of release on that amp envelope. So going back in here on our fourth envelope, I'll just bring down the release. And that's much better. So that's my version of Closer's lead synth. It's definitely not exactly the same, but I hope this helps you get closer. As always, stay tuned for more.